Welcome, friend, to another journey together. Tonight, you are gently invited into a space of stillness, a quiet space, a calm space, where nothing needs to happen, and nothing needs to be fixed. This is not a place you must reach, and not a state you need to create. It is simply a soft invitation to slow down, to soften the body, and to allow the mind to rest, just as it is. As you listen, there is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to understand, and nowhere else you need to go. For now, just arrive and rest here, in this moment, in this space. You will hear a series of Zen stories, simple stories, quiet stories, passed down through years of listening and years of seeing clearly. They are not here to teach you something new, and not here to give your mind more to hold. They are not meant to be solved, or remembered, or understood in any particular way. Each story is simply an opening, a gentle opening, inviting awareness to settle without effort, without searching, and without expectation. As the stories unfold, understanding is allowed to arrive on its own, slowly, naturally, in the spaces between the words. Before we begin, allow your attention to settle, gently, without trying to focus, and without trying to listen in any special way. The first story will arrive quietly, without announcement and without urgency. You do not need to prepare for it or follow it closely. Simply remain open and let the words move through you, slowly, like distant footsteps, fading as they pass. This is where the journey begins. In a quiet mountain monastery, there lived a monk who made a vow unlike any other. He vowed to remain completely silent, not for a day, not for a month, but for 7 full years. He believed that words were distractions, that speech pulled the mind outward, away from stillness and truth, and so he chose silence as his path. Each morning, he rose before dawn. He swept the stone paths. He carried water from the well. He sat in meditation with the others, never speaking, never explaining himself. When questions were asked, he bowed. When guidance was offered, he listened. When others spoke to him, he answered only with a gentle nod. The years passed slowly, one season folding quietly into the next. Spring blossoms came and went. Summer rains softened the earth. Autumn leaves fell without complaint. Winter covered the monastery in snow. Through it all, the monk remained silent. Some admired his discipline. Others were unsettled by it. They wondered what kind of understanding could grow in the absence of words. But the monk himself felt certain. With each day of silence, he believed he was moving closer to truth, closer to clarity, closer to freedom. What he did not yet see was how quietly attachment can disguise itself as devotion. As the years passed, the silent monk's presence became part of the monastery's natural rhythm. Morning bells rang, incense drifted through the halls. Seasons turned quietly from green to gold to white, and still he spoke no word. To the others, his silence appeared disciplined, even admirable. They saw restraint, they saw devotion. They assumed his practice was deepening with every unspoken sentence. But inside the monk, something subtle was happening. Each time a word rose and was swallowed, a small tension remained, not obvious, not dramatic, just a faint tightening, like a knot tied gently, again and again, until it was no longer noticed. He told himself this was progress, that endurance was wisdom, that control was freedom. And so, when laughter appeared in him, when joy flickered unexpectedly, when spontaneity knocked softly at the door of his awareness, he turned it away, not because it was unwholesome, but because it did not fit the rule he had given himself. Years of silence passed in this way. Clean floors, tended gardens. Long hours of sitting, perfect composure, and beneath it all, a quiet rigidity slowly hardened. The monk believed he was emptying himself, but in truth, he was holding something very tightly. Not speech, but the idea of being silent.
Zen teachings remind us that attachment does not always appear as desire. Sometimes it disguises itself as discipline, as purity, as spiritual effort. The vow had begun as a path, but without noticing, the path had become a boundary, and boundaries, when mistaken for truth, can become walls. The monastery remained peaceful.
The monk remained silent. Yet something essential was waiting not for more years, but for a single moment of release. And that moment was closer than anyone could have imagined. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled softly through the temple windows, a visitor arrived at the monastery. He was a wealthy merchant, his cart heavy with sacks of rice, a generous offering to support the monks through winter. The monks gathered quietly as the donation was brought inside. The merchant, eager to help, insisted on carrying one of the largest sacks himself. But as he stepped across the smooth stone floor, his grip slipped. The sack struck the ground and tore open. Rice spilled everywhere. White grains scattered across the hall, rolling into corners, covering the floor that had been swept so carefully that morning. The merchant froze, his face flushed with embarrassment. The monk stood still, uncertain how to respond. And then it happened. The silent monk began to laugh. Not softly, not politely, but fully. Laughter burst from him, sudden and uncontrollable, echoing through the hall like a bell that had been struck after years of silence. 7 years without a single word, and now laughter. The monk stared in disbelief. The merchant looked confused. Even the air itself seemed startled. The laughter continued, rising and falling, until tears formed in the monk's eyes and his body finally grew still. Silence returned, but it was no longer the same silence as before. Something had cracked open. Not the rice, not the vow, but the monk's understanding of himself. In that moment, the wall he had built so carefully gave way, and through the opening, clarity entered not as an idea, but as release. One clear afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the wooden halls of the monastery, a visitor arrived at the gates. He was a merchant from a nearby town, his cart filled with sacks of rice. A generous offering meant to sustain the monks through the coming winter. Grateful for his donation, the monks gathered quietly as the rice was carried inside. The merchant, eager to show his sincerity, lifted one of the heaviest sacks himself. But as he stepped forward, the stone floor beneath him proved slick. The sack slipped from his hands and struck the ground with a dull thud. The fabric tore open. Rice spilled across the hall, thousands of white grains scattered in every direction, rolling over the carefully swept floor, settling into corners and cracks like sudden snow. The merchant stood frozen, his face burning with embarrassment. The monks fell silent, unsure whether to move or speak. And then from the center of the hall, a sound broke the stillness. The silent monk laughed. Not a restrained smile, not a polite chuckle, but open, unguarded laughter. It poured out of him, full and resonant, echoing through the hall that had not heard his voice for 7 years. The monk stared in shock. The merchant looked around in disbelief. The laughter continued, rising and falling like a wave, until at last it faded on its own. Silence returned. But it was no longer the silence of restraint. Something essential had shifted. The vow had been broken, and in its breaking, something far more important had quietly begun to emerge. That evening, after the monastery had settled back into quiet, the head teacher found the monk alone in the hall. He was kneeling on the floor, carefully sweeping the last grains of rice into a small pile, moving with the same calm attention he had always shown. The teacher watched for a moment, then spoke gently. "Tell me," he said, "why did you laugh today?" The monk paused. He rested the broom against the wall and looked up. "For 7 years," he said, "I believed that silence itself was wisdom. I believed that each word I held back brought me closer to truth." He glanced at the clean floor. "But when I saw the rice scattered everywhere, something became clear to me. Rice is meant to nourish," he continued. "But when it is scattered without care, it becomes only a mess." My silence was meant to deepen my practice, but held too tightly. It became something else. The teacher listened without interrupting. I realized, the monk said softly, that I was no longer practicing silence. I was protecting it. He bowed his head slightly. I was not free. I was guarding an idea of myself. The teacher nodded, a faint smile forming. "Your silence taught you when to speak," he said, "and your laughter taught you when to let go." The hall fell quiet again. Not the silence of effort, not the silence of control, but the silence that follows understanding. This story points to something subtle, yet deeply human. We often believe that spiritual practice must be extreme, that discipline itself is awakening, that holding tighter will somehow lead to freedom. But Zen reminds us that both silence and speech are tools, not destinations. Silence can heal. Words can heal. And both can also become prisons when clung to without awareness. The silent monk did not suffer because he was quiet. He suffered because he became attached to the identity of being silent. This is how attachment often appears. Not as craving, but as virtue. Not as indulgence, but as control. We create rules for ourselves. We follow them faithfully, and slowly, without noticing, the rule begins to follow us. Zen calls this spiritual rigidity, when practice hardens into performance, and discipline replaces understanding. The Buddha taught the middle way. Not too much, not too little, not clinging to form, and not rejecting it either. Silence is meaningful when it serves clarity. Speech is meaningful when it serves compassion. The moment either becomes an identity, freedom narrows. The monk's laughter was not a failure. It was a release, a reminder that awakening is not found in perfect control, but in responsiveness to each moment. As you reflect quietly now, notice where effort in your own life may have turned into tension, where discipline may have become attachment. And consider this gently. True practice is not about holding on. It is about knowing when to let go. Understanding often arrives not when something is perfected, but when something quietly falls apart. What breaks can teach us what wholeness never could. And sometimes, the most faithful teacher is not a master, but an object slowly revealing its impermanence. This is the story of the broken tea bowl. In a small temple nestled among gentle hills, there lived a Zen master known for his quiet presence and his unusual habits. Among all the objects in the temple, one drew the most attention. It was a tea bowl, old, cracked, its surface traced with fine lines that spread like a web of time across the ceramic. Each time the master poured tea into it, a thin stream of liquid escaped through the cracks, dripping steadily onto the wooden table below. The students noticed this immediately. They watched as small puddles formed beneath the bowl, day after day, while perfectly intact and beautiful tea bowls sat unused in the cupboards.
Visitors would glance at the leaking bowl and then at the master, confused. Some students felt embarrassed, others felt uneasy. Why would their teacher, respected throughout the region, continue to drink from something so clearly broken again and again? They offered replacements. "Master," they said gently,
"this bowl has reached the end of its life. Please allow us to bring you a proper one." But the master only smiled. He placed a cloth beneath the bowl, poured his tea carefully, and drank as he always had, as if nothing were wrong, and as if everything was exactly as it should be. The students could not understand his attachment. Each day, they brought new bowls before him. Some simple, some finely crafted, some gifts from wealthy patrons, carefully wrapped, clearly valuable. Yet the master refused them all. "This bowl and I understand each other," he said softly. "We have grown old together." The students exchanged uncertain glances. To them, the bowl was no longer useful. It leaked. It stained the table. It required constant attention. They wondered if their teacher was being stubborn. Some whispered that age had clouded his judgment. Others suspected there was a lesson hidden here, one they could not yet see. Winter arrived that year with unusual severity. Cold crept through the temple halls. Frost gathered on the windows each morning. And still, the master reached for the same bowl. He placed it gently on the table. He set a cloth beneath it. He poured the tea, drip by drip by drip, to me each day. The cracks widened slightly. The leaks grew slower, then steadier. Time was quietly at work. The students watched, knowing without being told that something was approaching. Not repair, not replacement, but completion. One cold morning, as the master prepared his tea, the inevitable happened. He lifted the familiar bowl with steady hands. Steam rose gently into the winter air. For a brief moment, everything appeared unchanged, and then the bowl gave way. A sharp crack ran through the ceramic, sudden and final. The fractures that had spread quietly for years joined at once. The bowl broke apart in his hands. Tea spilled across the table. Fragments of clay scattered onto the floor. Steam drifted upward, then faded. A student nearby rushed forward, startled. "Master," he said. "Are you hurt?" But the master did not respond immediately. He knelt down slowly and began gathering the broken pieces, one by one. He lifted each fragment with care, as though it were something alive, as though nothing had been lost. The student stood frozen, expecting grief, or disappointment, or regret. But the master's face was calm, not resigned, not surprised, only attentive. The bowl had not failed him. It had finished, and in its breaking, something quiet and complete was being revealed. The student knelt beside him, still holding one of the larger fragments. "Master," he asked quietly, "why do you treat these broken pieces with such care?" The master looked at the shard in the student's hand, then at the others laid gently on the floor. "For many years," he said, "this bowl taught me while it was whole. It showed me how things age, how cracks appear slowly, and how change cannot be stopped." He placed another fragment beside the rest. "But now," he continued, "it teaches me something else." The student listened closely. "This bowl was never meant to last forever," the master said. "Nor was it meant only to hold tea. It was meant to show impermanence." The student frowned slightly. "Should we try to repair it?" he asked. The master smiled. "To repair it would be to miss the lesson," he replied. What it had to teach through wholeness is complete. What it teaches through breaking is also complete. He rested his hands on his knees and sat quietly among the fragments. "Nothing is wrong here," he said softly. "Nothing has been lost. The bowl had fulfilled its purpose. And in letting it go, the teaching was finally whole." This story reminds us that impermanence is not a mistake. It is not something that happens to us. It is something that teaches us. We often believe that value lies in preservation, that what is cracked must be fixed, that what is aging must be replaced, that what is breaking has failed. But Zen offers a quieter view. Everything that appears also disappears. Everything that is formed eventually changes. The tea bowl did not lose its meaning when it broke. Its meaning became clearer. In our own lives, we rush to repair what feels damaged, a relationship that shows strain, a body that no longer behaves as it once did, a dream that no longer holds its shape. We label these moments as lost, yet often
They are completion. What was meant to be learned has already been learned. The master did not cling to the bowl because it was useful. He honored it because it was honest. It showed him, day by day, that nothing remains as it is. And when it finally broke, there was nothing left for me to resist. Zen teaches that suffering does not come from change,
but from refusing to accept it. When we stop trying to make the impermanent permanent, life softens. We grieve less. We fear less. We hold less tightly. As you rest now, notice where something in your life may be asking to be released, not repaired. What if letting go is not the end of meaning, but the moment meaning becomes complete? When something breaks, we often believe the lesson is finished. But sometimes what truly needs to fall away is not the object, but the direction we have been moving in all along. The next story is about a seeker
who discovered that even spiritual progress can quietly lead us away from truth when we do not know where we are going. This is the story of the one who walked backward. On a clear autumn morning, a monk arrived at the gates of a Zen monastery. At first glance, there was nothing unusual about him. He wore simple robes. He carried a small
traveling bundle. His posture was upright and calm, but as he moved closer, the gatekeeper noticed something strange. The monk was walking backward. Each step was slow and deliberate. His feet moved carefully. Yet his face was turned toward the path he had already traveled. Word spread quickly through the monastery. Monks paused their morning duties to watch in quiet disbelief. The backward-walking monk crossed the stone paths without stumbling. He turned corners with ease. He moved as if guided by something other than sight. When he reached the main hall, he stopped and bowed, still facing away. "I wish to stay here for a short time," he said calmly. "I am a seeker on the path, though perhaps not walking it as others do." The abbot observed him closely. Without questioning his method, he granted permission. And so, the monastery welcomed a guest whose way of moving through the world would soon become a lesson no one expected. From that day on, the backward-walking monk moved through the monastery in the same unusual way. During meals, he sat facing away from the table, reaching carefully behind himself to find his bowl. In the meditation hall, while the others faced forward in silence, he placed his cushion in reverse, his gaze resting on the back wall. Even when he slept, his mat was laid opposite to the others, as if his body refused to align with convention. At first, the monks found this amusing. Some whispered explanations. Perhaps he had taken a vow. Perhaps he followed a distant school. Perhaps this was some advanced practice they could not yet understand. But as the days passed, the amusement faded. The backward walking monk never wavered, not once. Each step he took was measured and precise. Because he could not see where he was going, his attention never drifted. He listened closely. He felt the ground beneath his feet. He sensed movement in the air around him. Paradoxically, by facing away from the future, he became completely present. His limitation sharpened his awareness, and without trying to teach, without speaking a word of explanation, his presence quietly unsettled the monastery, for he moved as if every step mattered, while the rest walked forward without truly seeing where they were going. By the third morning, the abbot could no longer ignore his curiosity. As the backward walking monk crossed the courtyard, moving slowly between stone lanterns and fallen leaves, the abbot approached him from the side, the only position where they could face one another. "Brother," the abbot said gently, "your presence here has unsettled many minds. You walk with great care," he continued. "Yet in a way none of us understand." The monk stopped. He remained facing backward, but turned his head slightly toward the abbot. "Why do you move through the world this way?" the abbot asked. "What wisdom guides this practice for a moment?" The monk said nothing. Then he spoke calmly. "For many years," he said, "I walked forward as everyone does. I studied teachings. I practiced diligently. I sought enlightenment as something ahead of me." The abbot listened without interruption. "I was always moving toward a goal," the monk continued, "always becoming, always advancing." He paused. "One day, I realized something unsettling." The abbot waited. "I saw that every step forward was also a step away from where I already was." The courtyard was silent. Leaves stirred in the wind. And in that quiet space, the monk's words lingered not as an answer, but as a turning point. The monk remained still, his back toward the path ahead. "For 40 years, he said, I hurried toward awakening. I read sutras. I followed masters. I practiced with discipline. Each step felt like progress." He folded his hands calmly. "But one day, during what I believed was my deepest meditation, something became clear. I was chasing what had never left me." The abbot's gaze did not waver. "I was searching for presence while standing inside it. I was trying to arrive where I already was." The monk's voice softened. In that moment, I felt the weight of effort, not physical effort, but spiritual ambition. I realized I had mistaken movement for awakening. Slowly, the monk turned his body. For the first time since his arrival, he faced forward. "But now I see," he said, "that walking backward was only another direction. Forward and backward are the same illusion. Both are forms of seeking." The courtyard seemed to widen. "Truth," the monk said quietly, "is not found by moving. It appears when movement ends." He stood in stillness, neither advancing nor retreating. And in that stillness, something essential had already arrived. This story reveals a quiet paradox at the heart of spiritual seeking. We believe awakening lies ahead of us, that we must move toward it, improve ourselves, refine our understanding, become something more. And so we walk forward, always forward, but Zen gently asks a different question. What if the one who is seeking is already what is being sought? The backward walking monk did not find truth by reversing direction. Walking backward was not the answer. It was a mirror, a way to reveal that seeking itself was the movement keeping him away. Forward movement created hope. Backward movement created insight, but neither brought freedom. Freedom appeared only when movement stopped.
Zen teaches that awakening is not a destination, it is the recognition of what has never been absent. The effort to arrive often hides the place we
already stand. When we stop measuring progress, stop comparing states, stop asking how far we have come, presence becomes obvious, not dramatic, not special, simply here. As you rest now, notice how often your own mind leans forward toward improvement, toward resolution, toward a better version of this moment. And consider this gently. What would happen if nothing needed to be reached, if this breath, this awareness, this moment were already enough? Zen reminds us that the deepest peace is not found at the end of the path. It appears when we realize we never left it.
When seeking finally comes to rest, what remains is not an answer, but a way of seeing. Sometimes, wisdom does not reveal itself through effort, or movement, or silence. Sometimes, it appears in what we overlook, in reflections we mistake for truth. The next story explores the difference between wisdom itself and the shadow it casts.
In a quiet monastery, surrounded by bamboo groves, there lived a young monk named Dokai. Unlike the others, Dokai was not drawn to long hours of meditation or careful study of sacred texts. Instead, his attention was fixed on something else, the shadow of his teacher. Each morning, as sunlight entered the hall, Dokai positioned himself carefully on the wooden floor, not to follow his breath, but to watch how the master's shadow stretched and shifted. He observed how it grew long in early light, how it shortened as the sun climbed higher, and how it disappeared entirely at midday. During walking meditation, while others focused on each step, Dokai's eyes followed the shadow as it moved across stones and gravel. He watched it bend around corners, break across uneven ground, and merge with the shadows of trees and walls. In his mind, these movements held meaning. He believed the shadow contained a hidden teaching, something more subtle than words or instructions. And so, while wisdom stood plainly before him, Dokai devoted himself to studying its reflection. As days passed, Dokai's attention grew more intense. He began to record what he saw, marking patterns in his memory, believing each movement of shadow was a message meant only for him. When the master spoke during teachings, Dokai listened with half an ear. His eyes followed the shadow instead, tracking how it slid across the tatami mats, how it touched certain objects and avoided others. He wondered what these movements meant. During garden work, while others raked gravel mindfully, Dokai watched the shadow bend and stretch, fragmented by bamboo leaves and wooden beams. He convinced himself that ordinary teachings were incomplete. The true wisdom was hidden, revealed only to those who knew where to look. The other monks noticed his distraction. Some smiled indulgently, others shook their heads. But the master said nothing. He watched quietly as Dokai's practice turned outward, away from direct experience, toward interpretation and projection. Dokai believed he was seeing deeply, but without realizing it. He had stopped seeing what was real, for he was studying darkness, while the light that created it stood plainly before him. One morning, the sky remained covered in thick gray clouds. Light spread evenly through the monastery, soft and diffuse, casting no shadows at all. Dokai entered the hall as usual and stopped. There was nothing to observe. He moved from place to place, searching the floor, the walls, the garden paths. No shadow followed the master. No shape stretched or shifted. No sign appeared. Unease stirred in him. During teachings, Dokai sat restlessly. His eyes darted across the room, unable to find the familiar outline that had guided his attention for so long. Without the shadow, he did not know where to look. His practice felt empty, directionless. By midday, his calm had dissolved into quiet panic. Everything he had relied upon had vanished with the light, and in its absence, Dokai realized without the shadow he had nothing to study. For the first time, he felt completely lost while sitting directly in front of his teacher. After the teaching ended, the master approached Dokai. "You seem troubled today," he said gently. "What is disturbing your practice?" Dokai bowed deeply. "Master," he replied, "I cannot find your shadow. Without it, I do not know where to look. The wisdom I have been studying has disappeared." The master listened without comment. Then he asked a single question. "Where is your teacher right now?" Dokai looked around the hall, his eyes searching the evenly lit room. "I cannot see your shadow," he said again, confused. "I do not know where to find the teaching." In that moment, the master lifted his foot and struck the wooden floor. The sound echoed sharply through the hall. Dokai startled. His attention pulled instantly into the present moment. "This student," the master said calmly, "has been studying darkness and ignoring the light that creates it." The hall fell silent. No shadow appeared. No explanation followed. Only the sound still ringing in Dokai's awareness, clear and unmistakable. This story reveals a quiet mistake we make again and again. We become fascinated with the reflection of wisdom, rather than wisdom itself.
The shadow feels mysterious and it seems subtle. It appears special, but it cannot exist on its own. Without light, there is no shadow. Dokai was not wrong to seek understanding. He was wrong about where to look. Zen teaches that truth is not hidden in symbols, signs, or special experiences. It is found in direct seeing.
When we chase insight through ideas, concepts, or the words of others, we may miss what is already present. The master did not explain. He did not lecture. He simply returned Dokai to this moment, to sound, to sensation, to awareness itself. The stamp on the floor was not a punishment. It was a reminder. Awakening cannot be studied at a distance. It must be lived. As you rest now, notice where your own attention goes. Are you watching shadows, ideas about peace, ideas about presence, ideas about wisdom, or are you willing to turn gently toward the light that makes all seeing possible? Zen reminds us that nothing needs to be added, only noticed. When attention turns back to what is real, the mind often resists. Not because truth is difficult, but because it asks us to release what we have been holding. The next story is not about effort or discipline or insight. It is about letting go at the very moment we believe we should hold on, at the edge of a quiet village. An elderly Zen master lived with a small group of students. His teaching style was simple. He spoke rarely. When he did, his words were plain and easily forgotten. One afternoon, a young student approached him with concern. "Master," he said, "I feel unsettled. No matter how much I practice, my mind keeps grasping. I try to let go, but I do not know what to release." The master listened without nodding or frowning. Nearby, a strong wind passed through the courtyard, lifting dust and leaves into the air before carrying them away. The master gestured toward the open space. "Tell me," he asked, "when the wind moves through this place, what does it take with it?" The student looked around. "Nothing," he said. "It only passes through." The master smiled slightly. "Then why?" he asked gently. "Are you trying to hold what is already leaving?" The student fell silent. In that moment, he realized he had been gripping the idea of release as tightly as anything else. And the teaching had only just begun. The student sat quietly, his thoughts circling the master's question. "I understand the words," he said at last. "But when I sit in meditation, my mind keeps reaching. It reaches for calm, it reaches for clarity, it reaches for the feeling of peace." The master nodded once. "And when you reach," he asked, "what happens?" The student hesitated. "I become tense," he admitted. "I feel as though I am failing, as though I am missing something." The master picked up a small stone from the ground and placed it gently in the student's open palm. "Hold this," he said. The student closed his fingers around it. "Now," the master continued, "notice the effort." The student felt the subtle tightening in his hand, the constant adjustment to keep the stone from falling. "Release it," the master said. The student opened his hand, and the stone dropped back to the earth. "Did you let go?" the master asked. "Or did you simply stop holding?" The question lingered. The student looked at his empty palm, realizing that what he called letting go had always been another form of effort. He had been trying to drop what was never meant to be held, and in seeing this, something in him softened. Fan 5.3. Be nothing to hold on to the insight. The master and the student sat together without speaking. The courtyard was quiet again. Dust settled. Leaves lay still on the ground. After a long while, the master spoke. "When you try to let go," he said, "you are still assuming there is something in your hands." The student listened carefully. "You believe peace is an object," the master continued, "that awareness is something you can gain, that freedom is a state you must reach." He shook his head gently. "But look," he said, "your hands are already empty." The student glanced down, as if seeing this simple fact for the first time. "You are not holding your thought," the master said. "They appear. They disappear. You are not holding your breath," he continued. "It comes, it goes, and you are not holding awareness," the master added. "It is what allows holding to be noticed at all." The student felt a quiet shift. Nothing dramatic, nothing sudden, just the easing of an unnecessary effort. In that moment, he saw clearly there had never been anything to release, only the habit of grasping at what was already free. In the days that followed, the student noticed subtle changes. When thoughts arose, he no longer rushed to correct them. When emotions surfaced, he did not try to push them away. He began to see that effort itself had been the disturbance. During meditation, his posture softened, his breathing found its own rhythm. There was no sense of progress and no sense of failure, only presence. Outside the hall, life continued as before. Chores were done, meals were shared, questions arose and faded, but something essential had shifted. The student no longer treated peace as something to be protected. He no longer chased calm or feared distraction. He discovered that clarity did not come from control, but from allowing experience to move freely. Nothing needed to be added. Nothing needed to be removed. By stopping the effort to hold on, life revealed itself as already complete. The teaching was not dramatic. It did not announce itself. It simply remained, quiet and obvious, in each ordinary moment. This story points to a quiet truth that is often misunderstood. Letting go is not an action. It is the absence of unnecessary effort. We imagine freedom as something that must be achieved. We believe peace arrives only after we release the right thing in the right way. But Zen reveals something simpler. Nothing was ever being held. Thoughts arise without permission. Feelings move without instruction. Awareness remains without effort. The struggle comes from trying to manage what does not belong to us. When we stop gripping experience, life does not collapse, it opens. We discover that presence does not need protection. Clarity does not need control. Peace does not need maintenance. The student did not gain anything. He lost something unnecessary. The habit of grasping. As you rest now, notice where effort still appears,
where you may be tightening around moments that are already passing. And consider this gently. What if nothing in this moment needs to be released because nothing is being held? Zen reminds us that the deepest ease comes not from doing less, but from realizing there was never anything to do. When there is nothing left to hold,
attention often turns outward again, back into the world of action and consequence. Zen does not ask us to escape life, but to meet it clearly.
the next story explores how wisdom appears not in withdrawal, but in the way we respond when life places us directly in its current.
A river flowed swiftly along the edge of a small village, wide and cold, its surface broken by rocks hidden beneath the water. During the rainy season, the current grew stronger. The water rose higher. Crossing became dangerous. One afternoon, a group of travelers gathered at the riverbank, uncertain how to proceed. They had important places to reach, responsibilities waiting on the other side. Turning back was not an option. As they debated, a Zen monk approached, his robes damp from the mist rising off the water. He listened quietly as the travelers argued over the safest method. Some insisted on waiting until the river calmed. Others searched for a narrower crossing upstream. A few spoke of building the temporary bridge. The monk said nothing. Without warning, a cry rang out. A young man had slipped near the edge. The current seized him instantly, pulling him away from the shore. Panic spread through the group. The river did not slow. It did not hesitate. And in that moment, the monk stepped forward. Not with haste, not with calculation, but with complete presence. Before anyone could shout a warning, the monk entered the river. He did not fight the current. He did not rush against it. He stepped in at an angle, allowing the water to take part of his weight, moving with it rather than against it. The cold seized his legs immediately. The force pressed hard against his body, but his movements remained steady. He watched the surface carefully, reading the subtle changes in the flow, the darker lines where the water ran deeper, the brief calm behind submerged stones. The young man struggled ahead of him, arms flailing, breath breaking in panic. The monk did not call out. He did not instruct. He simply adjusted his position, timing his steps with the rhythm of the river, closing the distance without resistance. When he reached the young man, he did not grab him suddenly. He placed a firm hand beneath the man's arm, another against his back, guiding his body sideways into a gentler current. Together, they moved diagonally downstream, letting the river carry them toward the shallower bank. Moments later, their feet touched ground. The monk released his hold as naturally as he had taken it. The river continued on, unchanged, but on the shore, everything was quiet. The young man collapsed onto the riverbank, coughing as water spilled from his lungs. The travelers rushed forward, wrapping him in dry cloths, voices overlapping in relief and disbelief. They turned toward the monk. "You saved his life," someone said. "How did you know what to do?" The monk knelt briefly, checking the young man's breathing, then stood. "I did not know," he replied calmly. The group fell silent. "I did not plan," He continued, "I did not decide. When the river moved, I moved with it." The travelers exchanged confused looks. "You stepped into danger without hesitation." One of them said, "Were you not afraid?" The monk looked back at the water, its surface already smoothing itself, as if nothing had happened. "Fear appears," he said.
So does clarity. In that moment, there was no time to choose between them. He adjusted his wet robes. When thought falls behind action, he added, "The body knows what to do." The words lingered, but no explanation followed. The young man sat up slowly, alive, shaken, silent. And beside the river, the travelers sensed that
What they had witnessed was not bravery, but something quieter and far more precise. As the young man regained his strength, one of the travelers stepped closer to the monk. "You acted without thinking," he said, "but how can one trust action when there is no time to think?" The monk considered the question, his gaze still resting on the river. "When the mind rushes ahead," he said, "it creates fear. When it lingers behind, it creates hesitation. But when attention stays with what is happening, action becomes simple." The traveler frowned slightly. "Is that instinct," he asked, "or training?" The monk shook his head. "It is neither," he replied. "It is alignment. When there is no argument with the moment, the body responds accurately." He gestured toward the river. The water does not plan how to flow around a stone. It does not hesitate before changing direction. It simply meets what is there. The travelers listened quietly. In that moment, the monk continued, "There was no rescuer, and no one to be rescued. There was only movement responding to movement. The river carried on, indifferent to praise or explanation. And the teaching settled, not as an idea, but as recognition. This story reminds us that wisdom is not always quiet or still. Sometimes it appears in movement, in response, in the way we meet life when there is no time to prepare. We often believe that clarity must come first, and action must follow. But Zen shows us another order. When attention is fully present, clarity and action arise together.
The monk did not act from courage or calculation. He acted from intimacy with the moment itself. There was no space for hesitation, no space for fear to take hold. Not because fear disappeared, but because it was not consulted. In our own lives, we wait for certainty before we move. We rehearse outcomes.
We imagine risks, we delay, and in doing so, we often miss the simplicity of what is being asked of us. Zen does not encourage recklessness, it invites responsiveness, to meet what is here with the whole of our attention. When we stop arguing with the present, action becomes accurate, not perfect, not heroic, simply appropriate. As you rest now, notice moments in your own life where thought rushes ahead or lags behind, and consider this gently. What might change if attention stayed with what is happening now, allowing response to emerge on its own? Zen reminds us that life is not something to be figured out, it is something to be met. When action ends, the mind often returns to questions of meaning, not about what we did, but about what remains after the movement has passed. The next story explores how freedom appears not through effort, not through response, but through the quiet recognition that nothing needs to be carried forward. On the edge of a wide plain, a traveler approached a Zen hermitage at dusk. He had walked for many days, his pack heavy on his shoulders, his steps slow with fatigue. Inside the hermitage, an old teacher sat by a low fire, warming his hands as night settled in. The traveler bowed deeply. "I have come seeking freedom," he said. "I have studied many teachings. I have practiced diligently, but everywhere I go, something still weighs on me." The teacher looked at the traveler's pack. "You have walked far," he said quietly. "Would you like to rest?" The traveler nodded and lowered the pack to the ground with a sigh of relief. For a moment, the silence between them was complete. Then the teacher asked, "Before you continue your journey, tell me, what are you carrying?" The traveler glanced at the pack. "My belongings," he replied. "My texts, my understanding, my efforts." The teacher added a small log to the fire. "And which of those," he asked, "will you need when you stand still?" The question lingered in the fading light, and the traveler felt, for the first time, that the weight he carried might not belong to the road at all. The traveler sat near the fire, hands open, watching the flames shift and settle. "I carry my learning," he said, "my vows, my discipline, the progress I have made." The teacher nodded, as if hearing something familiar. "Each step," the traveler continued, "I remind myself of who I am becoming. I measure how far I have come. I worry about losing what I have gained." The teacher reached for the traveler's pack and lifted it slightly. "It is not heavy," he said. "When it rests on the ground." He placed it back down. "But when you lift it," he added, "every step remembers the weight." The traveler frowned. "Are you saying I should abandon my practice?" he asked. The teacher shook his head. "Practice does not weigh you down," he replied. "Carrying it does." The traveler looked into the fire, seeing how the flames rose freely, leaving no trace of their effort. "You carry conclusions," the teacher continued. "You carry identity. You carry the idea of progress. And when you carry these," he said softly, "you are never where you are." The words settled slowly. The traveler felt a familiar tension begin to loosen, not because something had been taken away, but because something was no longer being held. The traveler remained seated, the warmth of the fire steady on his face. "If I do not carry my practice," he asked slowly, "how will I continue on the path?" The teacher did not answer immediately. He stood, walked a short distance into the darkness, and then returned, his hands empty. "When you stand up from here," the teacher said, "will you carry the fire with you?" The traveler shook his head. "No," he replied. "It stays here." "And yet," the teacher continued, "its warmth has already reached you." The traveler looked again at the pack resting beside him. Nothing about it had changed, and yet, everything had. "I thought freedom meant arriving somewhere lighter," he said quietly. "But I see now I was carrying the road itself." The teacher smiled faintly. "You do not need to abandon the path," he said. "You only need to stop dragging it behind you." The traveler sat in silence, feeling the strange simplicity of the moment. For the first time, there was no sense of leaving, and no sense of arriving, only rest. The night deepened around the hermitage. The fire softened into glowing embers, no longer rising, no longer reaching. The traveler did not move. He felt the familiar impulse to gather himself, to prepare for what came next. And for the first time, he did not follow it. The teacher watched quietly, saying nothing. In the stillness, the traveler noticed something unexpected. Without carrying his plans forward, there was no sense of loss. His body rested more easily. His breathing slowed without instruction. The weight he had carried for years did not need to be set down. It simply was not being lifted. Thoughts still appeared. Memories still passed through. But they no longer demanded to be taken along. The traveler understood then that freedom was not a condition to be maintained. It was what remained when nothing was being transported from one moment to the next.
The fire did not ask to be remembered. The road did not ask to be continued. And in that simple absence of carrying, the traveler felt a quiet, unforced ease he had never known before. Morning arrived without announcement. No bell was rung. No insight declared itself. Light simply entered the room as it always had. The traveler rose, washed his face in the cold water, and bowed not to the teacher, but to the space they had shared. Nothing more needed to be said. The road waited outside. Unchanged, dusty, ordinary, the traveler stepped onto it without urgency, without expectation of where it should lead. He did not carry the night with him. He did not preserve the stillness as a memory. He walked the way the body walks when it is not trying to arrive. Behind him, the teacher did not watch him leave. Ahead of him, there was no promise, and yet, each step felt complete. Not because it was meaningful, not because it was spiritual, but because nothing extra was being added to it. This was the final lesson. Unspoken, unclaimed. Freedom was not something he had found. It was what remained when there was nothing left to hold. The road continued, but something fundamental had shifted. Not in the scenery, not in the direction,
but in the way the traveler occupied the movement itself. Before, each step had leaned towards something. Understanding, resolution, arrival. Now, the step was simply a step. The traveler noticed how the body knew what to do without instruction. Feet meeting the ground, breath entering and leaving, the subtle sway of balance correcting itself moment by moment. There was no longer a watcher standing apart from the experience. The old habit of measuring the journey began to dissolve. Am I calmer now? Am I closer than before? Is this it? These questions still arose, but they no longer held authority. They passed like sounds heard from another room. For the first time, the traveler sensed that seeking had never been the problem. It was the weight placed on seeking that had exhausted him. Seeking had been treated as a task instead of a movement of curiosity, a demand instead of a listening. And when that demand fell away, what remained was not emptiness, but a quiet fullness that did not need confirmation. The traveler understood then why so many teachings ended without conclusions, why masters spoke plainly, or not at all, because the moment seeking stops arguing with itself, nothing needs to be explained. The mind rested, not because it was controlled, but because it was no longer being pushed. Even uncertainty softened. Even not knowing felt stable. The traveler realized that peace was not something discovered at the end of effort. It appeared naturally when effort stopped trying to justify itself.
And in that recognition, the road did not disappear. Life did not pause, but the movement through it became lighter, unforced, and quietly complete. As the day unfolded, the traveler became aware of how often the mind searched for something to adjust, a posture to correct, a thought to improve, a feeling to hold on to or push away.
These movements were subtle, almost invisible. They had lived beneath awareness for most of his life. Yet now they revealed themselves gently, without urgency. He noticed how the mind reached forward instinctively, as if peace required maintenance, as if stillness might vanish the moment attention drifted. And then, something softened. The traveler saw that this effort was not protecting peace. It was interrupting it. When the reaching paused, even briefly, there was no collapse. Breathing continued. Awareness remained. Life carried on without instruction.
The traveler rested into this discovery with quiet curiosity. Peace was not fragile. It did not need guarding. It did not require vigilance to remain intact. The mind had learned to strain out of habit, not necessity. Thoughts still appeared, asking familiar questions. Is this right? Am I doing this correctly?
Should I stay here? But instead of answering them, the traveler let them dissolve on their own. No resistance, no agreement, just space. And in that space, something ordinary revealed itself as extraordinary. The sense of being someone trying to arrive somewhere grew faint. What remained was simple presence, not elevated, not dramatic, not special, just this, the sound of wind moving through trees, the warmth of light on skin, the quiet rhythm of steps meeting the earth. The traveler realized then that effort had never been wrong. It had simply overstayed, like a tool kept in the hand long after the work was done. And when it was finally set aside, there was no sense of loss, only relief. A natural ease that did not announce itself or ask to be trusted. It was already here, waiting beneath the questions, patient and undisturbed. The traveler continued forward, not because there was somewhere to go, but because walking itself had become enough. As evening approached, the traveler noticed a familiar pattern attempting to return. A quiet voice suggested there must be something more to do, some final adjustment, some subtle mistake to correct. For years, this voice had shaped his days. It had disguised itself as responsibility, as discipline, as care. Now, it appeared again, but without force. The traveler did not silence it. He did not follow it. He simply allowed it to speak and pass. In that allowance, the voice lost its weight. What remained was not indifference, but trust. Trust that awareness did not require supervision. Trust that experience could unfold without constant interference. The traveler felt this trust settle into the body. Shoulders loosened, the jaw softened, breathing deepened without intention. He realized how much of his life had been spent managing himself, managing thoughts, managing emotions, managing appearances, managing outcomes, and how tiring that management had been. Now, nothing was being managed. Sensations arose and dissolved on their own. Sounds came and went without commentary. Even moments of restlessness were allowed to exist without correction. The traveler understood then that freedom was not the absence of movement. It was the absence of control over movement. Life did not become quieter. It became more honest, without the constant attempt to shape experience. Everything felt closer, more immediate, more real. There was no longer a need to step back from the moment to observe it properly. Being here was already complete participation. The traveler sat as darkness gathered, watching the last light fade from the horizon. Nothing significant happened, and that was enough. No insight arrived to mark the moment. No conclusion formed. Yet the traveler sensed, with calm certainty, that something essential had resolved itself. Not because it was answered, but because it no longer required an answer. The night moved in quietly, and the traveler moved with it, unburdened, unmanaged, at ease. Night settled fully. Stars appeared one by one, not arranged, not chosen, simply present. The traveler lay back against the earth, feeling the quiet firmness beneath him. There was no sense of a center from which experience radiated. No observer standing apart, no inner position to maintain. Thoughts arose, but they did not circle a self. They drifted like clouds without direction, forming briefly, then dissolving. The traveler noticed how often, in the past, he had tried to locate himself inside experience. Behind the eyes, within the chest,
somewhere that could be pointed to and protected. Now, that effort was absent. Experience continued perfectly well without a reference point. Sounds appeared in space. Sensations moved through awareness. Breathing happened without ownership. There was no inside and no outside, only immediacy. The traveler understood then why so many teachings spoke of emptiness without sadness. This emptiness was not a void. It was openness. Nothing was missing. Nothing was excluded. Without a center to defend, there was nothing to threaten. Even fear, when it appeared, had nowhere to attach itself. It rose, was felt, and passed like everything else. The traveler felt a deep rest that was not sleep, but deeper than effort. A resting that did not belong to him. The night sky did not watch him. The earth did not support him intentionally. And yet, everything functioned. In this absence of center, there was an unexpected intimacy. Life was no longer happening to someone. It was simply happening, and that was enough. The traveler remained there, not waiting, not reflecting, not concluding, resting without a place to rest. Before sleep arrived, the traveler noticed one last habit loosening its grip, the habit of remembering. Not memory itself, but the subtle urge to carry this moment into the next, to preserve it, to make it useful later. There was a gentle recognition that even this was unnecessary. What had unfolded did not need to be held. It did not need to become a lesson or a reference point. The night did not ask to be remembered. The quiet did not request continuity. Breath moved in and out, unconcerned with meaning. The body adjusted itself naturally, finding a position of ease without instruction. The traveler felt how easily experience completed itself when nothing was asked of it. No trace needed to remain, no understanding needed to be secured. Even the sense of having arrived faded softly. There was no arrival, no departure, only the gentle ending of one moment and the beginning of another, neither requiring comment. Sleep approached not as an escape, but as another form of rest already present. The traveler did not enter it, sleep entered him. And with that, the road, the questions, the search, all released their hold. Nothing was concluded. Nothing was unresolved. Life continued without carrying yesterday forward, and in that simplicity, the traveler rested as deeply as the night itself. The night did not end the journey. It simply revealed how quietly it could continue. Nothing needed to be carried forward. Nothing needed to be left behind, and from that simplicity, a new understanding began to unfold, not as a lesson, but as a way of seeing that would shape every step that followed. Morning returned without ceremony. Light touched familiar shapes. Sounds resumed their usual rhythm. Nothing announced itself as different. And yet, the traveler sensed a subtle change in how the world was met. The ordinary no longer felt like an obstacle to understanding. It felt like the place where understanding lived. He noticed the simplicity of routine, the weight of a cup in the hand, the sound of water filling it, the brief warmth rising with steam. Previously, these moments had been passed through on the way to something else. Now, they stood on their own. There was no need to frame them as mindful or meaningful. They were complete without commentary. The traveler realized how often he had believed that clarity required special conditions: silence, withdrawal, distance from the world. But clarity did not resist the ordinary. It revealed itself within it. Thoughts continued to appear, making plans, recalling fragments of yesterday, anticipating the hours ahead.
But they no longer crowded the moment. They moved like weather through a wide sky. The traveler did not try to stay centered. He did not try to hold on to stillness. He allowed attention to move naturally
From sound to sensation, from task to pause. Nothing needed to be corrected. Even distraction lost its sharpness when it was no longer judged. He understood then that presence was not a narrow focus to be maintained. It was the natural openness that remained when effort softened. Life unfolded as it always had: conversations, decisions,
small interruptions. But there was less resistance, less commentary about how things should be. The traveler felt available to what was happening, without needing to name that availability. The world had not changed. He had not changed. Only the struggle to stand apart from the world had eased. And in that easing, the ordinary revealed a quiet depth not hidden, not dramatic, simply waiting to be noticed. As the traveler moved through the day, he noticed something else: the absence of armor. Situations that once provoked tension or retreat now met him without resistance. Not because he had become indifferent, but because there was no longer a need to protect an image. Conversations unfolded naturally. Words came and went without rehearsing their impact. When uncertainty appeared, it did not demand control. When opinions differed, they did not threaten stability. The traveler realized how much energy had once been spent bracing against misunderstanding, bracing against judgment, bracing against being seen. Now, there was nothing to brace. The sense of self that required defense had softened into openness. This did not make life predictable. It made it honest. Discomfort still arose. So did moments of doubt, but neither needed to be pushed away. They passed through awareness, like visitors who did not overstay. The traveler saw that presence was not a shield. It was an openness that allowed everything to pass through without accumulation. Even conflict, when it appeared, no longer echoed. It ended where it occurred. The traveler understood then why peace is often mistaken for withdrawal. True peace did not separate him from life. It removed the barrier between him and life. There was a quiet courage in this, to meet each moment without preparing for defense, to stand where he was without leaning away. He noticed how this openness invited the same in others, not through effort, but through absence of resistance. The world did not soften, but the way it was met did. And in that meeting, life felt lighter, not because it was easier, but because nothing was being carried forward to weigh it down. As situations required response, the traveler noticed something subtle guiding his actions. Not a plan, not a rule, not a principle he needed to remember. Response arose from the moment itself. When help was needed, the body moved before thought assembled. When silence was appropriate, words did not appear. There was no sense of choosing correctly, only responding honestly. The traveler saw how often, in the past, action had been delayed by internal debate. Is this right? Will this be misunderstood? What does this say about me? Those questions no longer organized behavior. They still appeared at times, but they arrived too late to take command. Action no longer revolved around maintaining coherence or consistency. It adjusted naturally, like water finding its way around stone. Sometimes firm, sometimes yielding, always appropriate to what was present. The traveler realized that this was not intuition in the romantic sense. It was clarity, without a narrator. Life was responding to itself through him. Mistakes still happened. Words sometimes landed poorly. Decisions occasionally required repair. But none of this accumulated into self-judgment. Correction occurred and then released. The traveler understood then that freedom did not remove responsibility. It removed hesitation born from self-concern. Responsibility remained, but it was lighter. It belonged to the moment, not to a story about the self. In this way, action became simple. Not because life had simplified, but because the one trying to manage it had stepped aside. And in that stepping aside, a movement felt effortless, not perfect, not polished, just real. As evening approached once more, the traveler noticed a familiar thought trying to form. The idea that something had been completed, that a cycle had closed. He recognized it immediately and let it pass. There was no return to mark, no before to contrast with now. Life continued exactly where it was. The same streets, the same faces, the same responsibilities. Yet none of it felt like a burden to be resumed. The traveler saw that what he once called the path had never been separate from ordinary life. There had been no departure, no destination reached, only a gradual easing of the need to be elsewhere. This realization did not announce itself as wisdom. It felt practical, grounded, quietly obvious. He moved through small tasks, preparing a meal, listening to a voice, waiting without impatience. Nothing asked to be interpreted. Even moments of fatigue were allowed to be just that. No lesson attached, no meaning extracted. The traveler understood then that freedom was not something to revisit. It did not depend on memory or repetition. It lived in the absence of a center that needed returning to. When attention wandered, it wandered. When focus returned, it returned. Neither required comment. The evening settled, not as an ending, but as another expression of the same unfolding. The traveler did not pause to reflect on what had changed. He did not preserve the day as evidence. Life was already moving on, and he moved with it without looking back, without carrying forward, without needing to arrive. Night returned again, not as repetition, but as continuation. The traveler sat quietly, not reviewing the day, not searching for signs. There was no need to confirm that anything had shifted. Life had already answered through its own movement. Moments of ease had come. Moments of tension had come. Both had passed it without leaving a trace. The traveler noticed how little effort was required now to be where he was. No inner posture to maintain, no understanding to defend, no identity to uphold. Even the wish to be free had softened into irrelevance. Freedom was no longer an idea to live up to. It was simply the absence of struggle with what appeared. The traveler understood then why the teachings always pointed away from themselves. Why stories dissolved instead of concluded. There was nothing left to apply, nothing left to remember in order to be whole. The body grew tired. Sleep approached naturally. No ritual marked the moment. No gratitude was summoned. Breath slowed. Thoughts thinned. And awareness remained unchanged, unclaimed. The traveler did not think, "This is it." There was no it to name. Just the quiet certainty that life required no final understanding to be lived fully. As sleep arrived, it did not feel like leaving, and waking, when it would come, would not feel like return, because nothing essential had ever gone anywhere. Nothing new was about to be introduced. Nothing higher needed to be reached. What followed was not another teaching, but a deeper settling into what had already been quietly revealed. The day unfolded without asking for interpretation. The traveler moved through familiar moments, standing, speaking, waiting without checking them against an inner standard. There was no reference point to return to, no memory of clarity to compare the present against. Experience arrived cleanly. A sound was only a sound. A thought was only a thought. An emotion moved through without needing explanation. The traveler noticed how often, in the past, life had been filtered through what it was supposed to mean. This moment should feel calmer. That one should feel deeper. Another should feel resolved. Now, those expectations were absent, and in their absence, nothing felt lacking. Even confusion, when it appeared, was uncomplicated. It did not signal failure or loss of direction. It was simply part of what was happening. The traveler understood then that living without reference did not make life vague. It made it direct, without a story to uphold. Attention met what was present without distortion. Decisions arose from circumstance and not from identity. Words appeared when needed and fell away when finished. There was no effort to stay aligned with insight. Insight no longer needed maintenance. Life adjusted itself moment by moment, like breath finding its own rhythm. The traveler felt an ease that did not belong to any particular state. It did not rise or fall with mood. It was steady because it did not depend on how things felt. And in that steadiness, there was room for everything. Joy did not need to be captured. Difficulty did not need to be avoided. Each moment completed itself as it arrived. The traveler did not feel finished. He did not feel incomplete. He felt available to what was happening, without rehearsing meaning, without measuring progress, without needing to know where it led. Life was already moving, and he was moving with it unmarked, unburdened, present. As the hours passed, the traveler noticed how response no longer assembled itself around a narrative. There was no inner voice explaining who he was being in each moment. No quiet commentary keeping score. A request arose and response followed. A problem appeared and attention met it directly. Nothing extra was added. In the past, each action had carried a subtle explanation. This proves something. This protects something. This leads somewhere. Now action arrived without justification. The traveler saw how much effort had once gone into staying consistent with an idea of himself. Helpful, calm, awakened, certain. Those labels no longer organized behavior. Sometimes the response was gentle. Sometimes it was firm. Sometimes it was silence. None of it required alignment with a self-image. Even mistakes, when they happened, did not spiral into meaning. They were noticed, adjusted, and released. The traveler understood then that responsibility did not disappear when the story fell away. It became clearer, without the need to defend identity. Attention stayed with the actual need of the moment. This clarity felt practical, almost ordinary. There was no sense of acting from wisdom, only responding without delay. Life did not feel smoother, but it felt less heavy. The friction that remained belonged to circumstances, not to interpretation. The traveler moved on, step by step, without rehearsing the past or preparing a future self. Each moment arrived without introduction, and each response ended where it began, in the simplicity of what was needed now. At some point, the traveler noticed how little effort remained, not because life had become simple, but because effort was no longer spent arguing with experience. There was work to do. There were limits to respect. There were moments that required patience. None of this felt heavy. Effort arose when needed and dissolved when it was done. It did not linger as tension in the body or pressure in the mind. The traveler remembered how effort once meant pushing, holding, maintaining a direction. Now, it felt more like participation. Hands moved, attention followed, then everything rested again. No residue, even fatigue, when it appeared, was allowed to be felt fully.
It did not need to be interpreted as resistance or failure. Rest came naturally, without permission.
The traveler saw how the mind had once confused effort with control, and control with safety. Letting effort fall away did not make life careless. It made it responsive. When clarity was needed, it appeared. When uncertainty remained, it was tolerated without agitation. Nothing had to be forced into resolution. The traveler felt a quiet trust in the intelligence of the moment. Not an optimism, not a belief. A simple confidence that life could be met without constant intervention. He did not try to stay relaxed. He did not monitor his state. Relaxation arrived when there was no one checking for it.
The day moved on, uneventful, complete, and in that ordinariness, the traveler sensed a depth that did not depend on intensity or insight, just presence, unweighted. As the day settled into its later hours, the traveler noticed a steadiness that did not rely on attention. It did not require focus. It did not fade when the mind wandered.
It was simply there, in the past. Stability had been something to maintain a balance that could be lost with a single misstep. Now, stability felt different. It did not come from holding still. It came from not holding at all. Emotions moved through freely. Moments of ease and moments of strain passed in their own time. None of them threatened this quiet ground. The traveler saw that stability was not the absence of movement, but the absence of resistance to movement. Life shifted, circumstances changed, plans adjusted themselves, and yet, nothing felt unsettled. The traveler did not brace for what might come next. He did not prepare to lose what felt calm. Calm was no longer something possessed. It was the natural condition that remained when grasping was absent. Even uncertainty rested easily within it. Questions could appear without demanding answers. The traveler realized how much energy had once gone into preventing imbalance, into staying centered, grounded, aligned. Now, center was irrelevant. Wherever experience arose was stable ground. The body moved through the evening with simple awareness. Sounds arrived and faded. Light shifted and disappeared. Nothing asked to be fixed. Nothing needed to be preserved. The traveler felt a deep confidence. Not in outcomes, but in this capacity to meet whatever arrived without holding against it. And as night approached once more, this stability remained quiet, unremarkable, unshaken. Not because nothing changed, but because nothing needed to be held in place. As night returned, the traveler noticed how little remained to be done. There was no final posture to assume, no insight to stabilize, no state to protect. Everything that needed attention received it naturally, then released. The body grew tired and rested. The mind quieted without instruction. There was no sense of falling away from clarity when thoughts thinned or sleep approached. Nothing depended on staying awake. The traveler understood then that what had unfolded was not something achieved. It was what remained when effort stopped trying to preserve itself. Even the wish to keep this ease softened into silence. Ease did not need memory. It did not need continuity. It was present whether noticed or not. The traveler lay down, not marking the moment as an ending. The day had completed itself without summary. Breath moved slowly. Awareness remained open. No boundary formed between waking and rest. There was no sense of leaving experience or entering another, just a gentle dimming, like light fading without resistance. The traveler did not carry this understanding forward. There was no forward to carry it into. Life would continue, as it always had, and whatever arose next would meet the same openness,
not because it was remembered, but because nothing stood in the way.
In this simplicity, the traveler rested, not holding, not arriving, not becoming, just here as the night deepened, complete without effort. What follows does not build upon what came before. It does not refine it or carry it forward. It simply reveals how this understanding lives when nothing is being practiced and nothing is being remembered. What follows does not build upon what came before.
It does not refine it or carry it forward.
It simply reveals how this understanding lives when nothing is being practiced and nothing is being remembered. As the traveler moved through the day, it became clear that life did not require constant participation from thought. The body knew when to pause. The hands knew when to act. Attention shifted naturally toward what needed care. There was no sense of stepping back to manage experience.
Decisions arose from circumstance and not from analysis. When something required correction, it happened quietly, without commentary. The traveler noticed how often, in the past, he had believed that awareness must supervise everything to prevent collapse. Yet nothing collapsed. Even when the mind wandered, life continued to function
Smoothly. Walking happened. Listening happened. Responding happened. The absence of effort did not create confusion. It created efficiency. Not the efficiency of speed, but the efficiency of alignment, nothing working against itself. The traveler realized that effort had never been wrong. It had simply been unnecessary most of the time. When effort was needed, it appeared. When it was not, it disappeared without leaving tension behind. There was no pride in this simplicity, no sense of having mastered anything. It felt ordinary, practical, reliable. Life was not being guided, it was unfolding. And the traveler was no longer trying to stand apart from that unfolding. Later, a familiar impulse attempted to return. A subtle urge to check in, to see if things were still aligned, still calm, still clear. The traveler noticed this impulse without resistance, and in noticing it, it lost momentum. There was nothing to verify, nothing to keep intact. Even the wish to remain free was seen as unnecessary weight. Freedom did not depend on vigilance. It did not require monitoring. The traveler understood then that striving had not only existed in obvious effort, but in subtle forms, wanting to stay present, wanting to stay open, wanting to stay unburdened. Now, even these dissolved. Presence did not need to be held. Openness did not need to be renewed. They remained because nothing interfered. The traveler felt a deep settling not as an experience, but as the absence of reaching for one. Life moved forward without commentary. Moments arose and ended on their own terms. There was no sense of losing something precious when attention shifted elsewhere. Nothing essential was fragile, and in that recognition, the last trace of striving quietly released itself. What remained was not a state, not an understanding, not a conclusion, but a simple, living ease that required nothing at all. As situations arose that once would have unsettled him, the traveler noticed something quietly different. Difficulty still appeared. Misunderstandings still happened. Plans sometimes shifted without warning, but none of it felt personal. The familiar tightening in the body did not take hold. The reflex to retreat or defend did not organize itself. Instead, attention stayed close to what was actually happening. A problem was addressed because it needed addressing, not because it threatened anything. When frustration appeared, it was felt fully then released. It did not echo, it did not multiply.
The traveler saw how, in the past, challenges had been layered with unnecessary meaning. What does this say about me? Why does this always happen? What should I have done differently? Now, those questions lost their urgency. The situation resolved in its own time, and attention moved on. Ease did not disappear in the presence of difficulty. It remained because it was no longer conditional. The traveler understood then that peace was not fragile. It did not require life to behave a certain way. It simply required that nothing be added. As the day came to a close, the traveler did not look back to assess how it had gone. There was no internal summary, no conclusion drawn. The sense that something might be missing did not arise. Not because everything was perfect, but because nothing was expected to complete anything else. The traveler rested without the feeling of having arrived. There was no arrival to confirm. Life continued with its natural rhythm sound fading, light softening, the body preparing for rest. Awareness remained open, unconcerned with outcome. Thoughts slowed without instruction. Breath deepened without effort. Nothing was held.
Nothing was released. The traveler did not feel finished. He did not feel unfinished. He simply rested in the absence of needing more. And in that simplicity, life felt whole, not as an idea, but as an undeniable fact. As the day came to a close, the traveler did not look back to assess how it had gone. There was no internal summary, no conclusion drawn. The sense that something might be missing did not arise. Not because everything was perfect, but because nothing was expected to complete anything else. The traveler rested without the feeling of having arrived. There was no arrival to confirm.
Life continued with its natural rhythm sound fading, light softening, the body preparing for rest. Awareness remained open, unconcerned with outcome. Thoughts slowed without instruction. Breath deepened without effort. Nothing was held. Nothing was released. The traveler did not feel finished. He did not feel unfinished.
He simply rested in the absence of needing more. And in that simplicity, life felt whole, not as an idea, but as an undeniable fact. The days continued without carrying a theme. Nothing announced itself as practice. Nothing marked itself as insight. Life moved the way it always had. The traveler noticed how little effort was required to remain present when presence was no longer pursued. Attention drifted and returned without drama. Moments of engagement arose naturally. Conversation, work, quiet pauses between tasks. None of it felt separate from anything else. There was no need to divide experience into spiritual and ordinary.
Everything belonged. The traveler saw how life adjusted itself, continuously responding to conditions, changing direction when needed, resting when it could. No central authority was required. Even when uncertainty appeared, it did not interrupt the flow. It was simply another condition moving through. The traveler felt a deep respect for this natural intelligence, not as something mystical, but as something reliable. Life did not need improvement to be lived. It only needed space to move. And that space was already present. As this recognition settled, the traveler noticed a quiet trust emerging. Not a belief in outcomes, not confidence in himself, a trust in the unfolding itself. This trust did not speak. It did not reassure. It simply remained when the urge to control was absent. Plans were still made. Decisions still carried weight, but beneath them, there was no tension about how things should turn out. The traveler understood that trust did not mean certainty. It meant openness to whatever came. Even disappointment, when it appeared, was met without collapse. It passed without leaving bitterness behind. The traveler saw how belief had once been used to manage fear, hoping things would work out, needing assurance. Now, belief felt unnecessary. Life did not promise safety. It offered movement, and movement was enough. This, trust, did not require renewal. It did not fade when attention shifted. It was not held. It was what remained when resistance softened. The traveler moved forward, not guided by conviction, but accompanied by ease. Nothing needed to be proven. Nothing needed to be secured. Life was already happening, and that was sufficient. At times, the traveler still encountered moments that offered no clear direction. Questions arose without immediate answers. Paths crossed without signs. Yet uncertainty no longer felt like a problem to be solved. It was simply part of the terrain. The traveler noticed how the body responded calmly, even when the mind could not predict what came next. There was no urgency to resolve ambiguity. Waiting felt natural. Not knowing felt allowed. In the past, uncertainty had triggered effort analysis, planning, quiet anxiety about making the wrong move. Now, uncertainty rested within a larger openness. Decisions emerged when conditions clarified. When they did not, nothing forced itself forward. The traveler saw that clarity was not something summoned. It arrived when it was ready. And until then, life continued to function. Meals were prepared. Words were spoken. Steps were taken. Nothing stalled. Uncertainty did not interrupt living. It simply accompanied it. The traveler felt a steady patience not cultivated, not intentional. It arose because there was no longer pressure to arrive somewhere else. As time moved on, the traveler no longer measured progress. Days were not evaluated, moments were not compared. Each experience completed itself without needing reference. The quiet ease that had appeared did not expand or diminish. It remained constant because it was not held. Life continued in small details, voices passing, weather changing, tasks beginning and ending. Nothing felt incomplete. Even moments of fatigue were met gently. Rest happened when rest was needed. The traveler understood then that what had unfolded was not a phase. It was not something to maintain or return to. It was simply how life expressed itself when nothing interfered. There was no finish line ahead, no teaching left to apply. Only this ongoing movement, ordinary, unremarkable, and quietly whole. The traveler moved with it, without marking the motion, without naming the understanding. Life continued, and nothing stood in its way. As evening settled, the traveler did not sense an ending. There was no moment that asked to be recognized as significant. Life simply continued at its own pace. The ease that had been present did not deepen or recede. It remained steady because it was not being measured. The traveler noticed how completely experience fulfilled itself when nothing extra was added. No interpretation followed sensation. No conclusion followed action. Each moment arrived, completed itself, and passed on. There was no desire to hold on to this simplicity. No fear that it might be lost. It was not something possessed. It was the natural state that appeared when nothing was in the way. The traveler rested into this without intention. Breath moved quietly. Awareness remained open. There was no need to stay attentive, no need to drift away. Both happened naturally. The traveler understood then that nothing else was required for life to be whole. No insight needed reinforcement. No freedom needed protection. Everything essential was already included in what was happening. As night deepened, the traveler did not reflect on how far he had come. There was no distance to measure. Only this life unfolding, moment by moment, without resistance. And in that unfolding, there was nothing left to add, nothing left to seek, nothing left to do.
Nothing new is about to begin, and nothing from before is being carried forward. What unfolds next is not another step, not another insight, and not another refinement of understanding. It is simply life continuing to express itself when nothing is being guided, nothing is being corrected, and nothing is being remembered as something special. In this next part, there is no lesson to extract and no direction to follow. Only the quiet observation of how ease remains when attention no longer interferes. Life continued without reorganizing itself around any realization. There was no sense that something important needed to be preserved. The traveler noticed how experience no longer gathered around a point of reference. There was no center from which attention radiated outward. No inner place that needed to remain clear or stable.
Sensations appeared where they appeared. Sounds arrived without direction. Thoughts moved through without circling anything. In the past, experience had always felt arranged as if everything pointed back to someone observing. Now, that structure had softened. The traveler did not feel dispersed or lost.
On the contrary, experience felt more intimate without a center holding it together. Walking happened without a walker being located. Seeing occurred without a viewer standing behind the eyes. Breathing moved without ownership. This was not an altered state. Nothing about it felt dramatic. It was simply the absence of an unnecessary construction. The traveler saw how much energy had once gone into maintaining a sense of position. Am I here? Am I present? Am I still aware? Those questions no longer organized experience. Attention moved freely, not anchored, not drifting. Life did not need a center to function coherently. It had never needed one. And in this absence, there was a surprising sense of ease, not because something had been gained, but because something was no longer being held together. As the traveler moved through the ordinary moments, he noticed how experience no longer referred back to a self. A sound occurred without asking who was hearing it. An action completed itself without reinforcing identity. Even emotion, when it appeared, did not point inward. Joy did not say, "This is happening to me." Difficulty did not say, "I am being challenged." They arose and resolved on their own terms. The traveler remembered how experience once carried a constant echo, a quiet reference back to me. Even in silence. That echo had faded, not replaced, not suppressed, simply absent. This did not make life impersonal. It made it immediate. Without a self to report experience to, each moment stood on its own. The traveler did not feel invisible or erased. He felt unnecessary in the best possible way. Life was not happening to him, and it was not happening for him. It was simply happening, and he was not separate from it. This understanding did not arrive as a thought. It revealed itself through the way experience no longer needed commentary to feel complete. The traveler moved on, not noticing movement as progress, not noticing stillness as depth. Everything unfolded without pointing back, and in that unfolding, there was nothing missing, nothing absent, nothing to return to. As this way of living settled further, the traveler noticed how action continued without claiming authorship. Tasks were completed, decisions were made, consequences followed. Yet none of it gathered around a sense of ownership. Success did not solidify into pride. Mistakes did not harden into blame. They passed like weather through open space. In the past, every action had quietly asked,
"What does this say about me now?" That question did not arise. Action responded to need, then released itself. When correction was required, it happened plainly, without inner commentary. The traveler saw how responsibility remained fully intact. Nothing was avoided, nothing was dismissed, but responsibility no longer carried
The extra weight of self-definition. The body moved with appropriate care. Attention adjusted to what mattered. There was no sense of standing behind action, monitoring how it appeared. Life was functioning without being supervised. This did not feel passive. It felt precise, like a well-tuned instrument played without self-consciousness. The traveler realized that ownership had never improved action. It had only complicated it. Without ownership, movement became cleaner, response became quicker, resolution left no residue. Life was not being lived by someone. It was simply living itself, through conditions, through movement, through response, and nothing needed to be added for this to work. As time passed, even the sense of having arrived here began to dissolve. There was no longer a position from which to say, "This is how things are now." Experience did not stabilize into a viewpoint. It remained fluid, changing from moment to moment without losing coherence. The traveler noticed how subtle the final attachment had been, the idea of standing somewhere outside the flow. Even slightly, that too released. There was no longer a place to stand and observe life, only participation. This did not feel immersive or overwhelming. It felt ordinary. Life unfolded with conversations, with choices, with pauses and fatigue. Nothing about it required distance. The traveler saw clearly that reference itself had been the last form of separation. Once it fell away, there was no longer a past understanding to live up to, and no future clarity to move toward. Only what was happening. This did not erase individuality. It removed the burden of needing to locate it. The traveler did not feel merged or dissolved. He felt free to be whatever the moment required, without explanation. Life continued without marking this shift. No bell rang, no insight announced itself. And yet, something fundamental had ended. Not a journey, not a process. Only the need to know where one stands in relation to life. There was no relation left. Only this life unfolding, without reference, complete as it is, as this way of being continued. The traveler noticed that nothing stood apart from life anymore. There was no quiet distance from which experience was evaluated, no subtle separation that needed to be bridged. Life did not require agreement. It did not ask to be understood. It unfolded with its own texture, sometimes gentle, sometimes demanding, sometimes unclear. And none of this created friction. The traveler saw that friction had never belonged to events themselves, but to the effort to stand outside of them. Now, there was no outside. Participation happened naturally, without the feeling of being drawn in or pushed away. The body responded to heat and cold, to hunger and rest, without commentary. Thoughts appeared and dissolved without forming conclusions. Even reflection, when it arose, did not crystallize into identity. It passed like everything else. The traveler understood then that nothing needed to be excluded for wholeness to remain. Even confusion belonged. Even uncertainty belonged. Nothing had to be arranged to make life complete. Completion was not an outcome. It was the absence of standing apart. The traveler did not feel absorbed or lost. He felt available. Available to speak when speech appeared. Available to act when action arose. Available to rest when rest came. There was no need to hold this availability. It was not a quality to maintain.
It was simply what remained when nothing was resisted and nothing was claimed. Life moved forward, if it could still be called forward without asking for confirmation. And the traveler moved with it, not as a witness, not as a controller, but as life itself expressing one more moment.
Nothing stood apart. Nothing needed to. And in that simplicity, there was no question left that required an answer. Nothing further needs to fall away. Nothing else needs to be understood for this to continue. What remains now is not an insight, not a realization, but the quiet expression of this ease as it meets the world exactly as it is. In the next part, there is no shift to notice and no depth to descend into. Only the simple unfolding of life when nothing stands apart and nothing is held back. Life did not pause to acknowledge what had fallen away. It continued in familiar forms, sounds in the distance, the weight of the body shifting, small decisions arising without ceremony. The traveler noticed how little separation remained between what happened and the response to it. There was no interval where
Experience waited to be processed. Hearing and understanding were not two steps. Seeing and responding were not divided. Everything occurred as one movement. In the past, there had always been a subtle delay, a moment of interpretation, a quiet check to see how this should be met. That delay was absent now, not replaced by urgency, but by immediacy. Life did not feel faster. It felt closer. The traveler saw how intimacy with experience did not require focus. It required absence of interference. Even moments of distraction were simply moments of distraction, not interruptions to something else. They arose, completed themselves, and dissolved. The traveler understood that this uninterrupted flow was not a special condition. It was what remained when nothing tried to stand between life and its own movement. Nothing needed to be sustained for this to continue. Nothing needed to be remembered to make it real. Life unfolded without commentary, whole in each moment, unbroken. As the traveler encountered others, he noticed how this ease extended naturally into relationship. There was no effort to be present, no attempt to listen correctly. Listening happened because there was nothing else competing for attention. Words were heard fully, without preparing a response. Silence, when it appeared, was not filled. The traveler saw how often, before, interaction had been filtered through self-reference. How am I being seen? What does this mean about me? What should happen next? That filter was gone. Conversation unfolded as shared movement. Agreement and disagreement both arose without tension. When misunderstanding occurred, it was addressed directly, then released. Nothing lingered. The traveler noticed how this absence of distance did not erase individuality. Voices remained distinct, perspectives differed, but none of it hardened into separation. Connection did not come from effort or intention. It came from the absence of defense. The traveler understood then that intimacy was not created. It was revealed when nothing stood in the way. There was no need to manage connection or protect space. Each interaction completed itself without residue. And as people came and went, nothing was taken and nothing was lost. Life met life without distance, simply, clearly, as it is. As life continued to move, action arose naturally without the feeling of burden. Things still needed to be done. Choices still appeared. Consequences still followed. But action no longer carried the weight of implication. There was no sense that each movement added up to something larger. Action met the moment, fulfilled its function,
and released itself.
The traveler noticed how much lighter this felt. In the past, action had always been accompanied by an invisible load expectation, self-evaluation, the need to justify. Now, action stood on its own. When effort was required, it was given fully. When it was no longer needed, it dissolved. There was no residue of tension or regret.
Even strong action did not harden into force. It remained responsive, adjusting moment by moment to what was actually present. The traveler saw that weight had never belonged to action itself. It had come from carrying action forward, replaying it, claiming it, or measuring its value. Without that carrying, movement felt clean. Life flowed without resistance. Not because nothing challenged it, but because nothing was being dragged along behind. As evening approached once again, the traveler noticed how simple it was to be where he was. There was no effort to arrive in the moment. No need to anchor attention. Being here required nothing. Experience presented itself without invitation sound, sensation, quiet spaces between. The traveler did not try to stay with any of it. Staying was unnecessary. Everything came and went on its own. The mind no longer reached to frame the moment as meaningful or ordinary. It was simply this. The traveler understood then that simplicity was not something achieved through refinement. It was what remained when complexity was no longer added. Life did not ask to be simplified. It only asked to be met without interference. As the light faded, there was no sense of closing a chapter. Nothing had begun that needed to end. The day completed itself without summary, and the traveler rested not as someone practicing ease, but as ease itself temporarily taking form. There was nowhere else to be, nothing else to understand, only this quiet, ordinary presence, unremarkable and completely sufficient. As the day came to rest, the traveler noticed how little stood between life and its own expression. There was no inner commentary following each moment, no habit of stepping back to assess how things were going. Life did not require approval. It did not wait to be interpreted. Moments arose, fulfilled themselves, and moved on. Even reflection, when it appeared, did not gather into narrative. It came and went. The traveler understood then that ease was not something added to experience. It was what remained when interference stopped. Nothing needed to be removed. Nothing needed to be refined. Life was already functioning with quiet precision. The body rested when rest was needed. Attention shifted without being guided. There was no sense of living correctly or incorrectly, only living. The traveler did not feel that something precious might be lost overnight. Nothing depended on memory. As darkness settled, there was no effort to hold this simplicity. Holding was unnecessary. Simplicity was not fragile. It did not require care. It remained because nothing opposed it. And in that absence of interference, life felt complete, not as a conclusion, but as an ongoing fact. Nothing stood in the way. Nothing needed to. What follows does not deepen this ease or take it further. It simply reveals how this simplicity moves through change, through uncertainty, and through moments that do not feel calm or resolved. In the next part, there is no promise of comfort and no lesson to preserve. Only the quiet observation of how life continues when ease is no longer a condition, but the ground itself. Change arrived without asking permission. Circumstances shifted. Plans rearranged themselves. Expectations quietly dissolved. The traveler noticed that ease did not withdraw in the presence of change. It did not harden into resistance, and it did not cling to what had been familiar. Change moved through experience, like weather through open land, sometimes gently,
sometimes abruptly. The body responded with natural adjustment. Attention followed what needed to be met. There was no inner demand for things to remain stable. The traveler remembered how change had once felt threatening, as if it challenged something that needed protection. Now, nothing required defense, even uncertainty, when it appeared suddenly, did not disturb the underlying calm. It was felt fully, then allowed to pass. The traveler understood then that ease was not the absence of change. It was the absence of arguing with change. Life did not pause to confirm readiness. It continued, and ease continued with it, not as comfort, but as openness. Nothing needed to be secured for this openness to remain. At times, the unfolding did not feel smooth. Moments of disruption arose, misalignment, loss, situations that did not resolve quickly. The traveler noticed how the old impulse to withdraw or tighten did not take over. Staying felt natural, not staying in the sense of endurance, but staying present without turning away. Discomfort was felt without being exaggerated. Difficulty was met without creating a story around it. The traveler saw how often, before, unsettled moments had been layered with fear of permanence. What if this lasts? What if this defines me? Now, those fears lost their grip. Unsettled did not mean wrong. Incomplete did not mean failing. Life could be uneven without being broken. The traveler remained available to what was happening, even when it did not feel calm. Ease did not disappear in these moments. It simply changed its expression, less quiet, more grounded. The traveler understood then that true stability did not require conditions to improve. It required nothing to be rejected. Life continued to move, sometimes smoothly, sometimes not. And through it all, there was space enough to remain. There were moments when ease did not feel gentle. Situations arose that pressed closely, demands arriving all at once. Emotions surfacing without warning, choices carrying visible consequences. The traveler noticed that ease did not soften these moments. It did not smooth their edges or make them pleasant. Instead, it allowed them to be fully what they were. Tension appeared in the body. Thoughts accelerated. Uncertainty sharpened attention. Nothing was pushed away. The traveler understood that ease was not comfort. It was capacity. Capacity to feel strain without collapse. Capacity to respond without retreat. In the past, testing moments had triggered a search for refuge, clarity, understanding, some internal ground to stand on. Now, there was no refuge to locate, and none was needed. The moment itself was sufficient ground, even when response required firmness or boundaries needed to be set. Action did not harden into defense. It remained connected to what was actually needed. The traveler saw that being tested did not mean ease was absent. It meant ease was no longer hidden behind comfort. As these moments passed, the traveler did not collect them as evidence of progress. There was no sense of having passed a test. Nothing had been proven. Life simply continued after each encounter. Ease did not increase because difficulty was met well. It did not decrease when response felt imperfect. It remained because it was no longer tied to outcome. The traveler noticed how quickly situations returned to ordinariness. After intensity, there was washing a cup. After tension, there was quiet walking. Nothing needed to be processed. The experience completed itself without residue. The traveler understood then that ease did not belong to any particular moment. It was not earned through endurance or skill. It was present before challenge arose and remained after it passed. There was no final lesson hidden in these encounters, no summary to extract. They were simply expressions of life moving through change. And the traveler moved with them, sometimes steady,
sometimes uncertain, always present enough. Nothing asked to be concluded. Nothing needed to be carried forward. Life continued, open and unfinished, exactly as it was. As this phase of the journey settled, the traveler noticed something quietly enduring. Ease was no longer tied to how things unfolded. It did not depend on circumstances aligning, on emotions calming, or on understanding remaining clear. It remained even when days felt ordinary, even when moments felt unresolved. The traveler saw that ease was not something carried forward from one situation to the next.
It did not accumulate. It did not need reinforcement, and it appeared freshly in each moment because nothing stood in its way. When life felt light, ease was present. When life felt heavy, ease was present not as relief, but as space. The traveler understood then that ease did not promise comfort. It promised honesty.
Honesty about what was happening, without the need to adjust it to fit an idea of how things should be. There was no expectation that life would become smooth. Only a quiet confidence that whatever appeared could be met. The traveler did not feel finished. He did not feel prepared for what might come next. And neither mattered. Life was not asking for readiness. It was asking to be met as it was. And in meeting it this way, without leaning away or reaching ahead, ease revealed its deepest quality, not calm, not certainty, not resolution, but availability. Availability to remain present no matter how life shifted. Nothing needed to be secured for this to continue. Nothing needed to be remembered to make it real. Life moved on, and ease moved with it quietly, without condition, without end. And now, without needing to carry anything forward, the movement continues on its own. Nothing from the previous part needs to be remembered, and nothing needs to be left behind. What unfolds next does not build upon effort, nor does it conclude what has come before. It simply reveals how this ease lives inside ordinary moments, quietly shaping the way life is met when nothing is being held together. As life continued, it became clear that nothing needed to be managed for ease to remain. There was no internal checklist to follow, no state to maintain, no balance to protect. Thoughts still appeared, sometimes quickly, sometimes repetitively. Emotions still moved, rising and fading without asking permission. But none of this disrupted what had already been seen. Ease did not retreat when the mind became active. It did not collapse when attention wandered. Instead, it remained quietly present as the space in which all of this occurred. The traveler noticed that previously, so much energy had been spent trying to keep things aligned, keeping the mind calm, keeping reactions appropriate, keeping experience within acceptable limits. Now, none of that effort felt necessary. Not because things were perfect, but because nothing needed to be corrected in order to be met. Life no longer felt like something that had to be held together. It moved on its own, and ease moved with it, not as control, but as allowance, without noticing when it happened. The traveler stopped checking himself against internal reference points. There was no longer a question of, am I present enough, or am I losing this? Those questions simply faded from lack of use. What remained was a simple responsiveness to what was here. When action was needed, it happened. When rest appeared, it was taken. When uncertainty arose, it was allowed to remain unresolved. Nothing felt unfinished, not because everything was complete, but because nothing required closure. The traveler realized that life did not need to be framed by meaning to be lived fully. Moments did not need to justify themselves. They arrived. They passed, and they left behind no residue. Ease was no longer something felt. It was the absence of resistance to whatever was felt. And in that absence, life expressed itself with the quiet simplicity that did not announce itself as special. It was simply life, moving, breathing, unfolding without commentary, without effort, without pause. As days unfolded, nothing dramatic announced itself. There were no signs, no confirmations, no moments that demanded recognition. Life appeared ordinary. Morning routines repeated themselves. Sounds returned to familiar patterns. Small concerns surfaced and dissolved without leaving marks. And yet, within this ordinariness, something subtle had shifted. The traveler noticed that moments no longer waited to be improved. A cup resting on a table did not need interpretation. A passing thought did not need to be resolved. Even boredom, once resisted, now moved through freely. There was a quiet recognition that nothing was missing from these simple moments, not because they were meaningful, but because they were complete as they were. The ordinary no longer concealed anything. It revealed itself fully without effort. And in that revealing, there was a gentle appreciation, not excitement, not gratitude, just a calm acknowledgement that this was enough. Fan 16.4 B. When seeking falls silent. At some point, the traveler noticed that seeking had quietly stopped, not as a decision, and not as a conclusion. It simply no longer arose. There was no longer a sense of moving toward anything. No future state waiting to be reached. No deeper understanding anticipated. The mind still functioned, still planned, still imagined, but the movement behind it was no longer driven by lack. Seeking had once promised fulfillment. Now it was seen as unnecessary. Life did not ask to be completed. It asked to be lived. And living did not require direction. It required presence, not the focused kind, not the disciplined kind, just the natural presence that remains when nothing is being avoided. The traveler did not feel awakened. He did not feel finished. He felt available. Available to what arrived. Available to what passed. Available to what could not be understood. And that availability was more than enough. Nothing needed to follow this. Nothing needed to be named. Life continued, and it was met without effort. As this movement settled, there was no sense of arrival. Nothing felt resolved, and nothing felt incomplete. Life did not present itself as a lesson learned or a chapter closed. It simply continued. The traveler noticed that even understanding no longer asked to be held.
Insights appeared and faded without being stored. There was no need to carry clarity forward as proof of anything. What mattered was not what had been seen, but that nothing needed to be remembered in order to live freely. The mind was allowed to forget. The heart was allowed to soften without direction. Nothing was being protected anymore.
Not peace, not insight, not even ease itself. And because nothing was guarded, nothing could be lost. Life felt lighter, not because it was pleasant, but because it was no longer being carried. The traveler moved on without marking the moment. There was no ending here. Only continuity, quiet, unforced, unremarkable. And that was enough. What follows does not deepen what has come before, and it does not turn away from it. It simply reveals how this way of being meets uncertainty, movement, and change without retreat and without grasping. As change began to show itself, it did not arrive as disruption. It arrived quietly. In small shifts, a plan altered. A mood changing, an expectation dissolving. Previously, such moments would have triggered a subtle tightening, a need to adjust, to stabilize, to protect what felt familiar. Now, that reflex did not appear. Change moved through without resistance, not because it was welcomed, and not because it was understood, but because nothing stood in its way. The traveler noticed that change no longer asked for permission. It did not threaten anything. There was nothing solid enough to be threatened. Thoughts about loss still surfaced, but they passed without taking hold. Uncertainty appeared, but it did not demand resolution. Life shifted direction as it always had. The difference was that it was no longer met with preparation or defense. Change did not need to be managed. It only needed to be allowed. And in that allowance, it revealed itself as movement, not danger. The traveler came to see that stability did not mean stillness. Life continued to move, sometimes gently, sometimes abruptly. Yet beneath that movement, nothing felt unstable. There was no inner ground that needed reinforcement, no center that required protection. Stability was not found by holding things in place. It appeared when nothing was being held at all. Action still occurred. Decisions were still made, but they arose naturally, without the weight of consequence pressing behind them. Even mistakes were no longer rehearsed in advance. They happened or they didn't. And when they did, they passed without leaving a trace of self-judgment. The traveler realized that true stability was not something maintained. It was what remained when the effort to stabilize fell away. Not a fixed point, but a quiet openness that could meet movement without being displaced. Life flowed, and nothing needed to anchor it. And in that flow there was a steady ease that did not depend on things staying the same. Uncertainty no longer arrived as a problem to be solved. It appeared as part of the landscape. Questions surfaced without demanding answers. The future remained undefined, and that no longer felt threatening. Previously, uncertainty had carried weight, a sense of incompleteness, a pressure to decide. Now, it moved differently. It stayed, it shifted, and it passed without urgency. The traveler noticed that not knowing did not prevent living. It softened it. Choices were made without needing guarantees. Paths were taken without assurances of arrival. Uncertainty became something that walked alongside, not something that stood in the way. And in that companionship, life felt less rigid, less narrow. There was room to pause, to change direction, to remain open. Nothing needed to be finalized for the moment, to be lived fully. With uncertainty no longer resisted, freedom revealed itself in an unexpected way. It did not appear as limitless choice. It appeared as the absence of compulsion. There was no pressure to move toward fulfillment or away from discomfort. Movement happened when it happened. Rest appeared when it appeared. Life no longer felt like a path to follow. It felt like a field in which movement occurred naturally. The traveler realized that freedom did not require knowing where one was going. It required not being forced to go anywhere at all. This freedom was quiet. It did not announce itself as relief or excitement. It simply allowed each moment to be what it was without asking for more. And within that allowance, life continued to unfold, not as a journey towards something, but as an expression already complete in each step. As this understanding settled, there was no impulse to secure it. Nothing asked to be protected from change, from forgetting, or from distraction. What had once felt fragile was revealed to be unbreakable, precisely because it did not depend on continuity. Ease did not require maintenance.
Presence did not require vigilance. Even attention was allowed to drift and return without consequence. The traveler saw that trying to hold on had always been the strain. Now, with nothing held, there was nothing to lose. Life did not need to confirm what was already evident. Moments came and went.
Sometimes clear, sometimes clouded. Both were received equally. There was no need to prefer one state over another. Nothing had to remain for this to continue. And so it did quietly, without effort, without interruption. What remained was not a state of mind, but a simple willingness to meet whatever appeared without bracing against it. That willingness did not feel heroic. It felt ordinary. And in that ordinariness, life moved on without friction. What unfolds next does not build upon stability or deepen freedom. It shows how this openness meets difficulty, loss, and moments that do not resolve themselves without closing. Difficulty did not arrive with warning. It appeared in familiar ways: a moment of loss, a misunderstanding, a sudden heaviness that could not be explained. In the past, these moments would have carried a second layer of struggle. Questions would arise, resistance would tighten, meaning would be demanded. Now, none of that followed. Difficulty was allowed to be exactly what it was. There was no attempt to soften it prematurely, no rush to transform it into insight. Pain was felt without being negotiated. Sadness moved without being corrected. The traveler noticed that difficulty did not deepen when it was not opposed. It unfolded. It expressed itself. And it changed, not because it was fixed, but because nothing blocked its movement. What once felt overwhelming now felt honest. Not easier, but simpler. And in that simplicity, difficulty no longer defined the moment. It passed through, leaving no residue that needed explanation. Loss, too, came quietly, not as drama, but as absence, something no longer there, someone no longer reachable, a future no longer forming as expected. The traveler felt the weight of it. There was no bypass. Grief moved slowly, without instruction. Tears came when they came. Silence followed, when words fell away. Yet beneath the grief, there was no collapse. Nothing essential had been taken. Loss did not erase presence. It did not threaten being. It simply reshaped what was here. The traveler realized the grief did not ask to be resolved. It asked to be met. And in meeting it without stories of unfairness or fear of permanence, grief softened naturally, not into relief, but into tenderness. Loss revealed how deeply life had been touched, and that touching, even in pain, was not something to regret. Life continued wounded, open, and still whole. As difficulty lingered, there was no impulse to step away from it. The traveler remained present with sensations that once felt too intense to stay with. Tightness in the chest, a dull ache behind the eyes, the quiet heaviness that settled into the body. Nothing asked to be pushed aside, nothing asked to be explained. Pain did not demand understanding in order to be felt. It asked only for space, and that space was already here. Breathing continued without instruction. The body adjusted in its own time. The traveler noticed that staying did not intensify pain. It softened the edges. What had once felt unbearable revealed itself as movement. Even discomfort was not fixed. It shifted, pulsed, and slowly changed shape. There was no heroism in this staying, no endurance to admire, just a simple refusal to abandon the moment because it was unpleasant. And in that refusal, pain lost its authority. It was felt, but it did not define. Without effort, compassion began to appear. Not as an attitude, and not as a response. It arose naturally from not turning away. The traveler did not try to be kind to himself. He simply did not oppose what was happening. And that non-opposition felt like kindness. Compassion extended quietly to the body as it tired, to the mind as it repeated stories, to the heart as it grieved without clarity. There was no attempt to improve the experience, no attempt to become better through it. Compassion did not aim to heal. It allowed healing to happen or not happen without pressure. The traveler saw that compassion was not something generated from strength. It came from honesty, from meeting experience exactly as it was, without adding distance. And in that closeness, nothing needed to be fixed in order to be held. Life felt fragile here, but not broken, open, but not exposed. And within that openness, a quiet warmth remained steady, unforced, and deeply human. As this phase came to rest, it became clear that nothing needed to be transcended. Pain did not require elevation. Grief did not need meaning. Difficulty did not ask to be turned into wisdom. Life was not presenting obstacles to rise above. It was presenting experience to be lived. The traveler no longer felt the urge to move past discomfort towards something cleaner or lighter. There was no higher place to reach. Only this place exactly as it was. What once felt like limitation revealed itself as intimacy, being close to experience without distancing, without interpretation, without escape. The traveler saw that freedom was not found by leaving anything behind. It was found by staying with the moment long enough for its texture to reveal itself. Nothing here asked for improvement. Nothing needed to dissolve for life to continue. And so it did quietly, honestly, without effort. This was not resolution. It was acceptance without conclusion, sir. What follows does not retreat from difficulty, nor does it remain within it. It shows how life moves forward when nothing is carried, nothing resisted, and nothing held apart. Life did not pause to acknowledge what had passed. It continued in small, unremarkable ways. Conversations resumed, responsibilities returned, ordinary decisions appeared again. Yet something fundamental was no longer present. Life no longer carried weight, not because it was easy, but because nothing was being added to what occurred. Moments did not accumulate. They arrived, were lived, and then released. The traveler noticed that memory still functioned, but it did not cling. The past was accessible without being active. The future was considered without being inhabited. Each moment stood alone, complete in itself, not leaning backward or forward. Life flowed, not as a burden to manage, but as a sequence of appearances that required no commentary. Responsibility remained. Actions still had consequences. Commitments still mattered, but responsibility no longer formed a sense of identity. The traveler did what needed to be done without carrying the role as something personal. There was no internal narrator claiming ownership of action. Work happened, care was given, decisions were made, yet none of it solidified into a story of self. Responsibility moved through without attachment. Mistakes occurred without becoming shame. Success happened without becoming pride. The traveler saw that responsibility did not require a self to carry it. It arose naturally from the situation itself. And when the situation changed, responsibility shifted with it. Nothing needed to be defended. Nothing needed to be justified. Life organized itself moment by moment without effort. Engagement with life did not fade. If anything, it became more direct. The traveler listened without rehearsing responses. He acted without measuring impact. Attention moved where it was needed without being guided. There was no sense of stepping back from life. Only the absence of pushing forward. Engagement no longer required motivation. It arose because something was present and responded to. When energy was available, it moved. When energy was low, it rested. Neither state felt like a problem. Life no longer asked to be optimized. It asked only to be met. And meeting it did not require effort. It required openness. That openness did not feel special. It felt practical, functional, natural. Connection appeared without being sought. Conversations felt simpler. Listening deepened without intention. The traveler noticed that connection did not require agreement, alignment, or emotional harmony. It arose when presence was undivided. Relationships were no longer places to secure meaning. They were moments of meeting. When closeness appeared, it was allowed. When distance appeared, it was allowed. Nothing needed to be preserved. Nothing needed to be repaired. Connection did not promise continuity. It offered immediacy. And immediacy was enough. The traveler realized that clinging had once disguised itself as care. Now, care moved freely without holding. Love did not tighten. It softened. And in that softening, connection became lighter, more honest, and more resilient. Life continued shared, unshared, and always complete in each meeting. As life continued to express itself, nothing accumulated. Experience did not stack into conclusions. Moments did not pile up into identity. Each encounter stood alone, complete as it appeared, then released without residue. The traveler noticed that even growth was no longer tracked. There was no sense of becoming more than before. No comparison between then and now. Learning still happened, but it did not collect. It moved through and left no trace that needed protection. Life felt clean in this way, not pure, not ideal, just unburdened. Nothing was being stored for later use. Nothing was being saved to define the future. The traveler moved from moment to moment without carrying proof that anything meaningful had occurred. And yet, meaning was present not as something extracted, but as the quiet fullness of what was happening now. Nothing was gained.
Nothing was lost. Life continued, lightly, without accumulation. What comes next does not add another layer to this way of living. It reveals how this openness meets purpose, direction, and the sense of moving forward without returning to effort. Purpose did not disappear. It simply changed its tone. There was no longer a sense of
needing to arrive somewhere in order for life to feel justified. Direction arose naturally from what was present. When something called for attention, it received it. When an action made sense, it was taken. Purpose was no longer projected into the future as a destination. It lived in the immediacy of response. The traveler noticed that purpose did not require motivation. It did not need reinforcement through belief or ambition. It functioned quietly, like breathing necessary, but not dramatic. Life did not ask to be meaningful in advance. Meaning revealed itself only after life had been lived, and sometimes not even then. And that absence of explanation no longer felt empty. It felt honest. Movement continued, but without force. The traveler did not feel pulled forward by expectation or pushed by fear. Steps were taken because the ground was there, not because a destination demanded it. Planning still occurred. The future was still considered. But it no longer occupied the present moment. The traveler saw that moving forward did not require effort when nothing resisted staying here. Progress was no longer measured. There was no scale to climb, only a gentle unfolding of one moment into the next. Life advanced without hurry, without hesitation, without commentary, and in that quiet motion, there was a deep trust, not in outcomes, but in the capacity to meet whatever appeared. Moving forward did not mean leaving anything behind. It meant allowing life to continue exactly as it was. Choice continued to arise, but without tension.
Decisions were no longer weighed against imagined futures. They emerged from what was needed now. The traveler noticed that choosing did not require certainty. It required honesty. Sometimes choices led to clarity. Sometimes they led to confusion. Neither outcome demanded correction. There was no longer an attempt to choose perfectly,
only a willingness to choose sincerely. Mistakes no longer carried a secondary burden. They became information, not identity. Choice was no longer a test of worth or intelligence. It was simply movement, and movement did not need to justify itself. Trust no longer pointed toward a specific outcome. It did not promise safety or success. It rested in the willingness to meet what followed. The traveler trusted not that things would go well, but that they could be met. Even failure lost its threat. It became one more form of experience. Trust did not eliminate fear. It made room for it.
Fear appeared without dictating direction. The traveler saw that trust was not belief. It was availability. Availability to respond, to adapt, to begin again if needed. Life moved forward without assurances. And yet, nothing felt reckless. Trust did not depend on control. It arose from the absence of resistance. And in that absence,
life continued open, responsive, and quietly intact. As this movement settled, there was no sense of nearing an end. Life did not present itself as a process approaching completion. There was no final threshold waiting ahead. The traveler noticed that the need to arrive had quietly dissolved. Moments were no longer evaluated based on where they led. They stood on their own. Living no longer felt like a path unfolding toward fulfillment. It felt like participation without expectation. Even purpose no longer implied a future reward. It expressed itself only in the act itself. The traveler moved through days without asking whether they were leading somewhere. They were lived because they were here. Nothing needed to culminate for life to be complete. There was no arrival missing, no conclusion delayed. Life was already happening, fully, without waiting. And in recognizing this, movement continued without urgency, without pressure, and without the weight of needing to become something else. What comes next does not summarize what has been seen, nor does it offer a final understanding. It simply rests in what remains when nothing more is required. What remained was not something achieved. There was no feeling of having reached a final understanding. No sense of standing at the end of a long journey. What remained was simpler than that. Life continued, without reference to what had been learned. Breathing happened without being noticed. Sounds appeared and disappeared without meaning attached. The traveler did not feel complete. He did not feel incomplete. Those measures no longer applied. Experience flowed without being checked against expectation. Even awareness did not announce itself. It did not need to be recognized to be present. Nothing stood out as more important than anything else. Nothing needed to hold attention. What remained was not clarity, not peace, not understanding, but openness. an openness that did not belong to anyone. It was simply here. And so, life was lived. Not carefully, not intentionally, not according to insight. It unfolded as it always had. The difference was not visible. There was no marker to show that anything had changed. Life did not become gentle. It did not become meaningful. It did not become easy. It became honest. Moments were met without preparation. Responses arose without delay. Rest happened when it happened. Effort appeared when it was needed, and disappeared when it was not. Nothing needed to be remembered from this. Nothing needed to be applied. There was no teaching to carry forward. Only life, as it is, moving quietly through itself. And that was enough. As this time together softened, there was nothing to carry forward. No insight needed to be remembered. No feeling needed to be preserved. Whatever had been heard could fade naturally, without loss. Life did not require these words to continue. They were never meant to become guidance, only a gentle accompaniment to what was already happening. Breath moved on its own. The body rested in its own way. Thoughts drifted without needing attention. Nothing here asked to be held. Nothing needed to remain clear. If these words dissolved, nothing essential would be missing. What matters is not what stays, but what does not need to stay in order for ease to be present. And that ease was never created by listening. It was always available beneath the listening itself. So now there is nothing left to do, no understanding to reach, no state to enter. Whether sleep comes or wakefulness remains, both are welcome. Let the body settle in whatever way it chooses. Let the mind wander or grow quiet without interference. You do not need to follow these words any further. They can fade into the background, like distant sound. Life will continue in its own rhythm, and you may rest inside that rhythm without effort. Thank you for sharing this quiet moment. This is the long night. Sleep well.